Hello?
Hey, 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 can you hear
Hello?
me?
I can hear you.
Good, 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 good.
Okay, so you're ready for this
I am,
discussion, isn't it?
yeah, I'm 100% ready. I'm ready to go. Caffeinated and plugged in.
That's great. So, I have like some questions here, obviously. If there's any question you don't want to answer, just say next question.
Okay, sounds good.
It's not anything like too crazy. Just in case I might have touched something that's a little sensitive. I don't think I have. I just want you to feel comfortable with saying, "Oh, fuck that." Next question.
I have a pretty thick skin. I'm older and I have a job where I deal with a lot of, you know, nasty people. So I have a
Yeah.
pretty thick skin. I doubt I'll have any issues.
Okay, that's great. Cause I can be. I think some people perceive me as being a bit insensitive, but I think I'm a great guy actually.
That's good. Good self-esteem is important.
Yes. So we're going to get to the interview in three, two, one. Lights, camera, action. So, um, please, my guest, introduce yourself to my small audience.
Hey, my name is Erin. I am 31 years
Mm-hmm.
old. I am an attorney. I live on the west coast of North America, the America part of it. Yeah, I live by myself in an apartment. And yeah, what do you want to know?
Okay, so you said your name is Erin.
Yeah, Erin.
Okay, and just to be clear, you will be considered a male to female transsexual, right?
Correct.
Okay. Hold on, I'm just making sure something is. 1 second, please. Okay, yeah, everything's good. All right,
Yeah,
so we're gonna get right to it. All right, so I have some questions for you, Aaron.
yeah, go ahead.
So let's start off here. Did your parents have any understanding or consideration for the possibility that their child may be transsexual? Because now there are some parents who are into the whole thing where it's like we're not going to give the baby a gender. They're gonna decide for themselves later on. Like, did you have those kind of parents, or were they kind of naive to the whole transsexual thing?
So they were definitely, um, yeah, definitely naive. I wouldn't really describe it as like they weren't aware. They had their beliefs were that it was like totally, made up and that it was like a lie. So they were aware of it, but they were very opposed. They had very opposed views to trans people, like very negative views, and also towards gay and lesbian people, but more so towards trans people. It
So
was
you
kind of like the thing where they didn't really believe. They thought it was like a media psyop, essentially.
and
They didn't
so
really believe.
you came to this conclusion all on your own, basically.
Yeah, yeah. I started thinking about gender and sexuality around age 9. I started researching, looking for books in the library about sexuality and gender, and going on the internet and just, trying to figure out like, what the hell is going on with me? Like, why do I feel these things? Um, you know, I made my mom take me to my pediatrician and talked with him about what was going on, you know. So yeah, it was very much a self-driven process.
Okay. So, all right. Next question then.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, when you talk to someone who has an alternative sexuality or
Hmm.
even a fetish, when you dive into their past, you can find certain hints or evidence of where these aspects of their character or preferences may have began. So, when you think back, where do you see the earliest signs that ultimately led to you deciding to transition?
Yeah, the earliest signs, well, yeah, I guess like I remember being about 9 years old. And I know that like I read like the book The Hobbit in like second grade, and then in like third grade, the first Lord of the Rings movie came out, and and they describe like elves or as like having like long hair and no beards and like being very androgynous, and the men were singing, that kind of thing. And that's I started to like think about it, or like that's kind of like what sort of started me thinking about it. I was like, wow, like that seems so much better, or like so much more me. Like I don't want to grow up into like a hairy, you know, barrel chested thing, like I feel more like I just like something feels different. That's sort of like the beginning of like, I just started thinking about like what am I going to grow up into? And that's when I started to feel kind of like what what is called, gender dysphoria, or it started to like creep into the back of my mind that there was like this problem that I was going to have as I like got older, um, and became more masculine. And another thing, more of a minor thing, but I also remember around 8 and 9 years old, that's when the first, video games came out that had gender selectable avatars. So Game Boy Advance games like Pokemon Crystal, and I think one of the early Fire Emblem games like Binding Blade or Blazing Blade, I always get those two confused. They allowed you to select a female character at the beginning of the game and like choose your gender. And I remember as soon as like when I first got that, or like when I first like had that option, it was like this really like powerful moment for me. It was like, oh my God, like yes, like I'm gonna select girl. And like I like because before that I had kind of, as like a little child thought that like playing with video games or playing with Hot Wheels like meant you were a boy, right? So that was kind of a moment that in early childhood that kind of like jogged my, just like oh, I can, you know girls can have these interests too potentially, um so that was like the very earliest beginnings of it, like 8 and 9 years old, those experiences.
I like playing as girls in video games, but I think our reasoning is probably a bit different. I like to
Huh?
look. I like to look at like I like to look at them from behind, and oh, I can dress her up as sexy and
Yeah,
provocative as so, like I kind of like it from that perspective. I like looking at a pretty girl and being able to control her. Um,
yeah. And that's,
but
I've heard that from, and sorry to talk out of turn. I don't know. You feel free to shut me up or redirect
no,
me.
no, it's cool. It's cool.
I've definitely heard that from a lot of, guy friends. And, for a lot of trans women, we have that too. Like a lot of us, you know, some of us are attracted to women or think women are hot, or some of us are attracted to ourselves as female, or like having, in the same way that like a guy might want to be buff, like we want to look, so we sometimes have a little bit of that too, but it definitely coexists with like a more like just on a baseline, this is the character I feel more natural as. So it's, you know, it, it's not like all trans people, I mean, not all trans people are the same, but it's not like we don't have any of that necessarily. I mean, especially those of us who are, by, or maybe attracted to women, but yeah, so it's kind of, so I just to
No,
sort
like
of, yeah,
I get it. It's like for you, it's not just about the aesthetic of what the girl looks like and enjoying what they look like in the game. It's about feeling more comfortable as a female character and having like those unique experience of being a female in that world.
exactly,
Because
exactly, yes,
like when I if because I do like playing it as girls in games, but it's like I still kind of project my masculinity into it. Where like in Skyrim, I might use a girl, but I'll get married to a girl. I'm not trying to be like a feminine, weak woman married to the man. I still like my masculinity is still kind of projected through that, but I like to just or when I play Cyberpunk, I had a female body but the male voice. So it's that's kind of how it is for me.
Right. Yeah. So you seem smart. You totally understand these like metaphysical things. So yeah, next question. Or
Yeah. Okay. So the next question is okay. It's very common for, or it's very common with LGBT people that there's a period of confusion, denial, or even self hatred regarding their sexual preferences or identity. Did you experience this at all, or was it like a more smooth process for you, as far as like coming to accept what your preferences were and your gender identity?
so I definitely experienced this drawn out struggle. It was horrible. I at one point thought I would never ever make it out of that, or like never get free of that doubt and confusion. I thought I would, I thought I would die feeling that way. I thought I would, commit suicide or die early in some other way. There were a lot of things going on. I had a lot of really intense homophobia from family members, like mainly my parents. And I also had a very homophobic social environment at school. And I was also very effeminate as a child. So I was like instantly when like third grade started and like people got a little start, I started getting called out for having feminine mannerisms. And just like being skinny, like wanting to do girl stuff and play with the girls. So that, started to have a cumulative effect. And then I started to exhibit, classical like teenage symptoms of like depression and acting out and grades falling and getting, starting to misbehave and like and it started to like weigh down my life overall, as time went on. And then in my, I I was like kind of, so I did sort of start to um, become more aware of my identity, in my teens. And, it was like I sort of tried to explore it, but, I couldn't really come out as anything. It just wasn't really possible for me. And I sort of, it was just a very like torturous time. And so it wasn't until I was like 22 years old, you know, um, and in college that I, for the first time or tried to come out as transgender, even though I had been pretty solid about seeing myself as trans and feeling like I was a woman and needed to transition since age 12. So basically in total it was like, almost 20 years. It was like about 18 years total of like struggle. I came out the first time and um I was rejected by my family and forced to leave my
Oh
parents'
wow.
house. Yeah, and I got that's when things got really bad. In my like mid 20s, I had really my depression became like clinical major depression, and I was like living and working by myself, but it was just like a very miserable time, and I didn't see any future for myself. And it wasn't until I was 30 years old that I could, um, just sort of accept it all and get started on doing what I needed to do. So,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, that's sad as fuck, man. That's really
Really
sad.
sad. It's
Y- y-
really sad, especially when I see other people in their early 20s who are saying things like, "Ah, I'm just going to detransition and take the easy way out, or I can't take it anymore. I'm so depressed. I'm so anxious. I can't do this. I'm not going to even make it to 30. I'm not going to make it to 35, And I just remember like every single thought like that going through and like just having to relive the pain and like just the like it can be so frustrating, like it's like I've been through what you're going through, and there is help, there is a brighter future for you, but they can't see it. They're like trapped in this black fog, and they are suicidal, and they do think that like it's over, that's what they're always saying on, I don't know if you are on LGBT, the TTTT board a lot, but that's like one of their catchphrases, it's over. And it's like, of
Yeah.
course, a lot of Zoomers who are, in that really vulnerable, like 17 to 22 years old period where, you know, I think that's when it's hardest to be trans, really.
Yeah. Because I'm thinking about your situation, and you're in your early 20s, and your family has basically abandoned you, and you have like this immense weight on your mind, on your psyche regarding your identity, and then you have to go out into the world and survive and work and live amongst all that. I can, I can, I can understand why that was probably extremely troublesome for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was not an ideal, life to live, but it's like I am very glad that I was able to survive that and get to where I am now.
Okay, so now you kind of answered this question already, but how did your family and friends react to your decision to transition, positive or negative?
Yeah, so it was extremely negative. My parents, threw the book at me and said I was like, psychotic, that I was a narcissist, had personality disorders. They said like maybe it was, fetal alcohol or fetal oxygen deprivation, or maybe you have autism, and they basically said like, that I was a monster. Um, and that I had to be like, they wanted me to they sent me to a conversion therapist, and it was like, so that was their reaction. It was like, you have a disease, or you are the disease, and
The most, the most extreme, the most extreme, hurtful reaction you could possibly receive. Then, I
yeah,
think once it gets to the point where like, okay, we got to send you to conversion therapy or conversion camp. That's like, okay, like you're really in for it then.
yeah. Well, it wasn't, I mean, it was, the doctor that they sent, I mean, the doctors wouldn't actually, you know, really do what they're, they didn't send me to a camp. They sent me to an
Okay,
individual specialist, like psychosexual specialist, who basically was like, yeah, your parents are living in another century. There's nothing I can do about, and just sort of he wouldn't actually try to convert me. He
okay.
just sort of, but they were like asking him to. So yeah,
This guy is not good at his job. What
yeah.
what's going on here? Oh man, he just
So
like
my
fuck it, do what you want.
So yeah. So my siblings, on the other hand, were very great. My siblings are like the core, my rocks, my sister and brother, they have always been, 110% supportive of me. It's like we, our parents' views didn't rub off on us. And then, I don't really like, um, I'm not really connected to my like childhood and high school social circle at all anymore. I haven't really, you know, I mean, being taunted in like middle school and like early high school and elementary school, I haven't really, it's been a long time since I experienced like peer group discrimination or harassment. So, you know, most people my age are like, they're either supportive, or if they are not, they keep it to themselves, So it's really like the overt hate I've experienced has all been from older family members in my parents' generation. People in the 50 plus or 60 plus, age range, the Gen X or boomers. Um, I,
Yeah, the old school
yeah,
cats.
yeah. And I mean, I know there are younger people who are transphobic too. I see people write posts online, but like, they tend to be a lot more, I think young people are a lot more self-conscious about expressing like really right-wing or bigoted beliefs because there's a fear of like being canceled, being put on blast, being like spread around, like there's like a little bit more. I mean, I think in the older generation they don't, the Facebook boomer generation, they don't really like think in exactly the same way. Right.
I
I mean,
think I think a lot of times it's just easier to not say anything.
mhm.
It's like even if you feel a certain type of way about it, like I know people that when interacting with someone who is gay or lesbian, like they'll be like super cool. You would think like they had like no type of bigotry or nothing in them. But then you get them by themselves, and then you will hear them say certain things, and you start to see like oh, why is she now calling this woman a dyke behind her back, or now I hear this person saying faggot, but they would never say that to like or around someone that they know is gay. So I think like some people they are just very good at just keeping that aspect of their thought process kind of locked away. And really, to be honest, if I'm being like, I feel like sometimes it's not even like they really like completely just hate you. But it's something there to where they do feel like I guess kind of like how girls say when they have the ick about something. I think a lot of people have that ick towards homosexuality or transsexuality, but at the same time they can still get along with and communicate with and be cordial with people who do fall under that umbrella.
Right, right, right. Yeah, so that's true. People have filters. You know, but a lot of older people in my family don't have that filter. Like for example, if my mom sees like a gay or lesbian presenting person in like a restaurant, she'll like either make everyone leave, or she'll like ask to see the manager and like, harass that employee. Like, it's like that.
Wow, wow, that's horrible. That's
Yeah,
bad.
like,
That's not okay.
yeah. I mean, like, I don't know if you've seen that one movie where like, it's like almost like she thinks that she might get like HIV, if like there's a gay person in the kitchen. It's just, you know, and it's just like, the more like rural, like really, I mean, there is like that sort of crazy like religious mindset, or whatever it is exactly, that's just like unhinged, and I mean, yeah, that's like on a different level than a lot of like ordinary,
Yeah,
views.
yeah, it's something that it happens. I've never really understood it myself. I even remember growing up, and there were just certain kids that were like obvious, like you kind of knew because you would see guys who were like really feminine, and I think even at a young age, like there were just certain people you're like, oh, like that's the gay kid, that's the gay dude,
Yeah.
and I never really felt like any sort of like weird way about it. And I think at the same time, like when I was growing up, like I would see things like different messages and whatnot. Like as far as
Mhm.
like as far as like maybe not directly pertaining to like pride or the LGBT community, but I would receive messages and hear people say things like, you shouldn't judge somebody according to their sexuality, and that's not right. And to me, that just always made sense. So I never really
Yeah.
had that as far as like feeling something. But then I think ultimately that helped me because when I started to get older and then reflect on my own sexuality and realize that I might not be as straight as I think I am, it was an easy process for me to accept that because I never had those feelings in the first place. So I was like, oh, so you know I got a little bit of the I got a little bit of the homo as well. Uh,
Yeah.
maybe not to the extreme. Maybe not to the extreme, but I definitely like those traps and stuff. So, but
Yeah.
I never had that myself because it to me it just always made sense that oh yeah, like just like someone's skin color, why would you judge somebody for their skin color? Why would you judge
Yeah.
somebody for their like? It just makes sense to me that some people would like the same sex, some people the opposite, etc. etc.
Yeah. No. Well, and I mean, I have like some people do sort of, are able to just kind of experience it without significant distress or internalized homophobia. It's definitely a privilege and definitely very, you dodged a bullet. And just to put out there, according to political correctness standards now, you can be straight and want to fuck traps according to like what they say. That's
And look. I know because it's the whole debate. You know, are traps gay and all that. But me personally, like because I think like it was easy for me to accept what I like. I think what bothered me was more so like being expected to label myself. I never really felt like any of the labels completely express how I felt personally. And so I'm at the point now where I just don't even really care about
yeah.
like the whole labeling thing. I know what I like. I'm
Hmm.
comfortable with what I like. Like I feel like if traps are gay, I don't want to be straight. I think like traps and the whole like that whole feminine aspect of homosexuality, everything from the transsexuals to the traps to the film boy. I think that whole aspect is very hot. Like androgyny, I just think is a
Yeah.
beautiful thing. So, I don't really care what it makes me. I just know that I like what I like. So,
Yeah. And there's been a ton of progress, around these things. I mean, like, just there's just been a lot more branching out in terms of like, it's like we still have stereotypes as a problem, but like, like this, it's like we have more stereotypes now, or like we have a wider range of stereotypes to work with. Like, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but yeah, I mean, so
yeah, I think like just for example, like when you look at someone like myself, I like traps, I like tranny porn and all that. And a lot of people would see that and they would want to just automatically I'm gay. They'll disregard any attraction that I have towards biological women, however you want to put it. And just by me liking traps, I'm automatically all the way on the other
yeah.
side. And that's the whole stereotype thing where it's like I can't just be I can't just say, "Oh, this trap shit is kind of cool," but I still like girls. Nah, like most people still want to push you all the way in the other corner.
I remember in like the early 2000s, like, or even like the mid 2010s, like, people used to say, like, on the internet, like, they would say, like, oh, if you're even questioning it, you're gay, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I've seen that.
it cracked me up. It's like the most instantaneous, like, way to just oh, it's like, it's too late. Like, if you were straight, you wouldn't have even thought of, like, you wouldn't be on the internet talking about gay stuff if you, like, so I think it was more like, maybe more like a troll than like a serious statement. But yeah, I know what you
I
mean.
I think there is some. I'm not gonna say truth to it, but I think as far as like how people look at it, in particular, I think it's more so to do with men. I think
Mm.
it's harder for people to accept that a man can be bisexual or attracted to men and women simultaneously, maybe to varying degrees. Like maybe he mostly hooks up with women. Every now and then he gets his dick sucked by a dude on Craigslist or something like that. But he still like people can't really see like the nuance of it. It's like once you take that first step into homosexuality, it immediately it's like you being gay or rather your attraction to the same sex seems to take precedent over your attraction to the opposite sex. And
Yeah,
it's
I know what you mean.
and it seems like with women, it's the opposite. Like with women, women can be bisexual and kiss girls and hook up with girls and have threesomes, but then people don't like that's not a big deal now. It's like you see a
Hmm.
bisexual girl and you still see her as being more hetero than gay because
Uh-huh.
you're gonna expect her to still get married to a man and have kids and whatnot.
Yeah, and people are very skeptical of lesbians, or yeah, it's like it's a total inversion. I have definitely thought about what you're talking about. Like the sort of mindset is like with like masculinity, it's like one little chink in the armor or like one little drop of gay,
Yeah,
and
I
that like
know. Yeah,
your whole like masculine facade of being like powerful and in control and hyper masculine. Where
and
with women it's like you don't you no one's going to believe that you're a lesbian until you have like shaved head, leather jacket, like really big, like spike collar, like with like until you're like totally stereotypical like butch lesbian. Like people are like not going to. It's like the opposite system. It's like, and obviously it goes back to how we just like how our culture views like femininity and masculinity. Not that I'm
yeah,
some sort of, yeah.
yeah. It seems like a double standard that's similar to the like how when men are promiscuous, it's cool. When women are promiscuous, it's not. And there's all
Yeah.
types of arguments pertaining to that. I'm not gonna get into that, but I do think that at the end of the day, it's like it's a double standard. And like you said, with men, I think that for us, there's just this great expectation for us to live up to these masculine ideas, and if when you don't, and I think it's unfortunate, but the fact is, I think that male homosexuality is kind of synonymous with femininity, because if you see a feminine man, you assume that he's gay, even if he's not. And so I think that so when a man has any sort of like gayness about him, I think inevitably people just they attribute a level of femininity to him that might not even be there. You know,
Yeah.
he might be tougher and more badass than a guy who's 100% straight. So, but I think that, and that's probably part of the reason why a lot of guys struggle with their sexuality as well, because for us again it's that whole desire to be macho and shit, and then you throw being gay or bi in there, it's gonna be harder for you to really be comfortable with your masculinity.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got the next question here.
Yeah, I'm trying to let you get through your list and not go on too many tangents because I,
I
I
know
know.
we're having a great conversation here. This is good. It's fantastic. So you identify as female, but
Yeah.
what I've noticed is that some transsexuals report having somewhat unusual attraction patterns. They'll say things like, "I feel more attracted to men after taking HRT or hormone replacement therapy," or you'll see them preferring to date other transsexuals instead of men. Have you noticed anything similar, and what are your own personal preferences as far as like who you like to hook up with or get into relationships with?
So yeah, this it's a complicated question. I'm one of the more simple transsexual women. I consider myself heterosexual. Um, in terms of like sexual fantasies, like I I don't think I've ever had a sexual fantasy about someone who was like that wasn't me with a man. Like I pretty much like um in terms of like what seems to be my innate sexual attraction, it seems like I only like men. Um, and that was pretty much true before HRT and true after HRT as well. Now, that being said, I definitely think there is some truth to the idea, that HRT does change your sexuality a bit and can affect your perceptions a bit and can just, it can, I think, change some things around. And it's kind of like hard to break down exactly what this is like to someone who is cis and hasn't been on HRT. But I guess like what I would start with is saying like, testosterone and estrogen are both sex hormones. They both sort of, you know, you can be attracted to someone and have sex and achieve an orgasm with either hormone, but they kind of work a little bit differently, or like a lot differently. The orgasm is different, like the buildup is different, the sensation is different, and the stimulation that you care about is a lot different. Like when you start taking HRT, at least this is true of me, it's true of a lot of people I've heard, you stop really wanting to look at audio and visual pornography, and you usually get more interested in tactile or written, like literotica, or tactile sensations. You want physical touch a lot more, and you're much more, it's just like the mindset is different. You're less visual. It's like you're not hunting with your eyes and ears. You're like feeling sensations with your whole body, like how like wrapping a blanket around yourself. So that change can affect, I mean, some people report that it affects your sexual orientation as well. And I don't know if I really buy that. I tend to like, not that I'm like a scientist or qualified to say, I mean, I tend to think like sexual orientation is deeper than what sex hormone you are on. I mean, I know that in England, like half a century ago, they used to like force gay men to go on estrogen. Like I don't think you can change your sexual orientation by like injecting testosterone or estrogen into yourself. So as far as people talk about that, I think that's mostly like people sort of layering their own self-exploration and like what they're coming to understand about themselves with like their experience with HRT, and it can kind of feel like your orientation is changing. This is just me straight off the dome, like my
Yeah.
my impression of it. I'm not a sexologist or a psychologist. I don't really know what's going on, but I guess I would say, like, I personally find women extremely attractive. I find female bodies extremely attractive, as an aesthetic object. But I have no desire to have sex with a woman. Like, which is kind of like that's just like the way, like, I don't know if you ever like see girls like who will like cuddle or like play, like kiss each other, like play kiss each other. It's like that's as far as I would ever go, or it's like it's kind of a weird, yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. So I guess I would say that like pre-transition, when I was on HRT, right before I was on HRT, when I had testosterone, or a cis male level of testosterone, I did have, there was a little bit more edge to like a little bit more like with my perception of female body. It's like I would definitely like notice female physique more, right? And I would think about, there was a little bit of like more predisposition, just, like to think about women in a sexual way, a very slight effect. And like after HRT, it's like totally gone. Like I will not normally notice what size a woman's breasts are, or like notice her ass or something like that. I'm more likely to like notice her makeup or her outfit, or like, what she's putting in her hair or something like that, So I do feel like there might be something there, with like the hormones, but it's definitely like, I think it's like 5% at most, and I think it's mostly all in the head, or it's like when you start to like take HRT and explore a new like gender identity, you're often allowing yourself to explore sexuality in a way you didn't before as well, which can kind of affect your perceptions. I mean, if you're a trans woman or a trans man and you are on the correct hormones for the first time, and you go out and start having sex with your preferred gender, like with everything, things like working the way you want it for the first time, it can often feel like something is like changing in your mind, but what it really is more like that's happening is like you're just discovering like what your actual sexuality is the whole time, if that makes sense. So I guess like in conclusion, my answer is like yes, there is a little bit of a hormonal effect in terms of like what's going to draw your eye, like what's going to turn you on, what things you're going to notice, what things you're going to think, but it's not going to like deeply change, your orientation. And I think a lot of accounts you read online about people being like, "Oh, I started taking estrogen and now I'm like a cock hungry monster."
Yeah.
They're touching themselves, they're getting into it and it's like, they're enjoying a little bit of like a fantasy. It's not I don't think that that is like literally what is happening to
You
people, but
you believe that any changes that might happen are very subtle, and there won't be any extremes. Anything that happens is more likely just uncovering what was already there. Is what you're saying?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, there might be some like subtle, like if you were like if you were like mostly attracted to men, but like maybe incidentally attracted to women, you know, you might find that you're like never really attracted to women. You might go from like 95 to 100%, but you're not going to like go from bisexual. I mean, some people do claim that it happens, like I was bisexual, now I'm straight, or I was gay and now I'm straight, but and I mean, maybe for them it does. I don't really know, but my experience is that it's like, you know, this is going to be it's going to be a marginal effect, and it's like the vast majority of your sexuality is like in your brain. It's in your like the hardwiring of your brain. It's not like in a hormone that's in your bloodstream.
Yeah, because we're basically touching on the whole nature versus nurture aspect of sexuality, and that's always been something very touchy. And really, I didn't even think of this question, but I just want to bring it up real quick. Um, don't you feel like there's a certain like there's something about this nature versus nurture argument where to me it seems like people are like at like kind of invested and adamant against the idea that sexuality can be altered in any way by outside forces or external forces. And me personally, I don't know either way, but to me it just seems like people have a certain level of investment in wanting to prove it one way or the other.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like
Def-
and I can only imagine. Cause I'm trying to figure out why people care, and I'm just kind of throwing something out there. But I kind of feel like the reason why people are kind of invested is because like maybe they feel like if we can prevent someone from becoming gay or bi or trans, why don't we just do that?
yeah, totally. I mean, and that's why you see like, the new push for all these like don't say gay and all these anti grooming, the culture focus and the focus on like education, in a lot of southern states, university education and K-12. I think they have sort of, it's kind of like ideological like meth, but it's like, oh, like if we just block people from ever like learning what gay is, they're not going to develop that way, and it's like, maybe that's true. I guess it's like can you in the 21st century, can you like actually like silo off a 12-year-old's mind, so that they don't figure out that, because it was definitely like, you know when I was growing up, that was impossible. Like the internet, we were just like
Yeah,
unsupervised
yeah,
internet.
exactly. Yeah, me and you are
Gave
me and you are the same age, by the way.
us-
So I know.
yeah. So like no one was gonna wall off a 12-year-old's mind, in 2005 or 2000, whatever it was. The adults were like, so far behind. Nowadays, I don't know, the internet's a lot more controlled and people are much more on their phones and they're much more, I think, easy to, easier to control via surveillance. I think that, apps, everything's getting more consolidated, more, so, maybe, you know,
I I th-
yeah.
I remember I was probably looking at tranny porn by like 13, 14, but like me and my, like the way I remember it, like I wanted to see everything. Like when I got into porn, I had no filter of like I can't. I wanted to see everything, and so I was just checking off every box, and that just happened to be something that I had liked. But you know,
So, so yeah, and when you kind of think back on it, and sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
yeah,
like, when you kind of think back on it, it's like, no force on earth is going to like keep like tweenage, I don't want to say boys, but like no force on earth is going to keep kids at that age level from like going out and exploring, porn. I mean, not to sound like a groomer or what have you, but it's just kind of like it's pretty futile. I mean, it's like because kids at that age are like, they have a lot of free time and they're
yeah.
smart and it's like, yeah.
And,
So,
but kind of like going back to what you said earlier about how like if we could kind of section off the gay to keep people from like being exposed to it, maybe they wouldn't go that way. I gotta be honest, and again, I'm cool with my with what I like and my sexuality, but I wonder if I would have ever really thought twice about my sexuality if not for pornography,
mm,
because my interest in anything gay has always been like linked to pornography. Like I've never been the type to just go out and I'm in love with my best friend. I love these guys. I've never been that type of guy. It's always been like everything has been centered around like that particular thing, like the transsexual trap world and fetish. And I kind of feel like if I was never exposed to it, I would have never thought twice about my sexuality. And again, I don't care, but I can kind of see where it's like, okay, well, if that wasn't there, I might have never even, you know, might have never
yeah,
found
and
out it was something that I'd be into.
well, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I mean, and I've heard that from a lot. I tend to hear that more from males, who as I opined earlier, more visual oriented and like just more predisposed to like look at porn and enjoy porn. Um, you know, Whereas like when I talk to my lady friends, like my girlfriends, they often talk about things in terms of their social relationships. Like, oh, I thought I might be bi or I thought I might be a lesbian when I started, with my friend at summer camp, or like I started to have this crush on my friend or like, something of that nature. I don't hear my girlfriends aren't usually telling me they were like, I mean, some of them are eventually did get into hentai, but not as like hard and strong as like,
But
boy.
yeah, and because I think where you're going with this is you hear a lot of guys who say, you know, I thought I was straight until I found Film Boy Link or or some type of like trap hentai or something like that.
Yeah,
And
well, just to continue, and I'm sorry, I can get quite talkative. I didn't mean to cut you off, but
go,
finish my,
go, go.
I would say I do think there is, I think this is an interesting topic, but like in my own experience, I mean, personally, I think it is linked to cultural forces, like because when I was young, teens and 20s, like, despite being a male attracted, like whatever, like pre-transition, transsexual, or who, queer, whatever I was, like I also heavily suspected or thought that it was like exclusively connected to porn or it was like tied to porn. And I specifically thought that could not have an emotional relationship with a man or couldn't like actually fall in love with a man. I like I kind of had that like that whole there was a time where I felt like I was stuck, like, oh, like I'm sexually attracted to men, but I'm romantically, attracted to women, right? And that I think was the product of cultural conditioning and like being in a lot of environments with hostile men growing up. Because like eventually when I did start dating men and met my first boyfriend, it was like, and I did have that romantic attraction and like had space to sort of think about it. It was like total 180, like total paradigm shift, right? Like, and it kind of caught me off guard because I was like, a full grown adult. I didn't realize how much could still change, but it was like totally, totally, like now I'm like, I couldn't imagine having a romantic relationship with anyone who wasn't a man, like it's like, and it's totally just a perspective thing, right? It's totally just like what you allow I mean, I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense. And again, this is, my own experience, like as a transsexual, probably not going to map onto most cis male bisexual experiences, like your own, which, there may indeed be more truth to like that it's just like an exclusively sexual or porn or, an exclusively sexual thing, something you want to try once in a while. But like in my case, I self repressed, like from an early age, I like indoctrinated myself to think that like romance was defined as like a heterosexual thing, and that there just wasn't, it just what wasn't really possible for, to like have affection from a person who was a male, like themselves a male. Like, so just to put my 2 cents out there, like I do think that it can be, cultural conditioning can be like surprisingly hard to grapple with and like get around. But
I got you. I got you. So the next question is, okay, I was reading an article that stated that 82% of transsexuals have considered suicide and 40% have attempted suicide. Have you personally struggled with these issues, and what do you believe are the root causes of this?
yeah, so guess I'll just launch right into this.
Launch.
My best friend was a trans man, and he took his own life in 2021. He had just turned 28 years old. This was August 2021. And he had, struggled with depression and mental conditions, but he had also struggled with rejection from a family member, specifically from his father, who, was a conservative Orthodox Jew. Um, so, so yeah, it, yeah, we most trans people do experience suicidality. I think that 82% figure is very correct. I think that, you know, unless you unless you have an environment where you can come out and socially transition like in childhood and receive like the acceptance and like the childhood in your desired gender, unless you can really have that like perfect, you know, perfect experience, like you are going to have a clash between your inner perceived sense of who you are and what your body is doing. And that is going to produce, that plus other social issues is going to produce suicidal thoughts. It's difficult to live with a physical disability, especially as you come into your own as an adult and start sort of having that awakening. And yeah, that's why I was saying, ages like 17 to 22, like late teens through the early and mid 20s are like the hardest time of our lives, like especially when we weren't allowed to access medical care or have a supportive social environment. Um, and then, and sorry, what was your whole question? So then in terms of suicide attempts, Um, I do think that that might be a little inflated. Um, a lot of times you see people being like, oh, like we don't, the transgender problem is just going to solve itself because like they're all going to commit suicide. And it's like, I don't think it's really, you know, I think that they count, like when they get those statistics, like if a trans kid, like, just like, I mean, what
Slices, like just cuts their arms a couple times.
they're going to count that as a suicide attempt. And I don't think,
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, you know, so you do have people like my friend, my best friend, who, attempted several times and eventually succeeded. Um, but I think that the percentage of us that are actually going to make serious suicide attempts and take our own lives is like,
Probably a
is
little
low.
bloated.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bloated. Cause it's so easy to do like light suicide attempts, and not to take it lightly, but some people they just slice the wrist a couple times, or they take 20 pills, and I was so depressed and this, and sometimes it's more of a cry for attention than the
Yeah.
extreme of I'm definitely just gonna blow my brains out. I'm going to end it without a doubt in my mind, like it's over with.
So yeah, so personally, I definitely experienced, a ton of suicidal ideation, clinical depression. I wanted to commit suicide. I thought I eventually would, but I don't think I ever was physically close to committing suicide. There are times I thought about it, but it's like I have, that inner physical resistance where it's like, you're just not going to kill yourself. I mean, you might want to, but you're just not gonna. So. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but
Yeah, I mean, when I was in my late teens and early 20s, I went through a pretty bad depression phase. I was suicidal. Of course, I didn't have to deal with any sort of like gender identity problems. I had other issues, but you know, I think just that age can be difficult, difficult in of itself, because you're going into adulthood, and I think a lot of people nowadays in childhood go through certain problems and have certain traumas and whatnot. And I had my fair share, and I think that all added up to where I felt like I wanted to take my own life when I was much younger. But obviously, if you add on to that what someone like yourself is going through, like your gender identity, and then on top of that, not being accepted by your family, maybe not being accepted by your peers. Those things kind of stack on top of each other and make a difficult situation even worse.
yeah, definitely.
Okay, so what's your personal stance of allowing children to transition at a younger age? Do you think there should be a limit in terms of how young someone should be before drastically altering their bodies with hormone replacement therapy or surgeries?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's like this, it's like the same as if you ask, like, should there be a limit to the age a child should can receive cancer treatment? You know, and I think if like, I mean, one little nugget I have, I'm an attorney, and I at least know about, how medical malpractice works and like what, sorts of questions come up in medical ethics. And, like patients often have varying levels of understanding about medical treatment, or they have a parent or a guardian who is in charge of making a decision, and like I basically really think it should be left up to doctors who evaluate the case and who come up with a treatment plan and get the consent that they need. And I really think that you need medical training to understand the ethics of that, like how that process works. Because, you know, all medical treatment has rare, horrible side effects. and people consent to medical treatments without, directly understanding how the treatment works, and maybe not with a direct understanding of what those side effects, could potentially do to them. Nevertheless, in some cases, that treatment is still the right call, right? You understand how I just laid that out? Like, so, I mean, I don't think that.
Hold up. Let me just express like how I kind of feel because I think I kind of
Okay.
got you here. Now, me personally, like I would not want to have kids, and for quite a few reasons. But like, let's say in this scenario, I have a child who is saying that they are transsexual. Now, see,
Yeah.
my struggle would be this because I've seen both sides of the coin where it's like you have people who knew I'm trans at a young age and they weren't able to transition properly, and and that might have helped them growing up into adult age as far as looking and
Mhm.
feeling the way that they want and just feeling better overall. But then you also see on the other hand, some people, detransitioning is
Yeah.
something that does happen. And I think for me, what what I would hate is to make the wrong call. I would hate to on one hand say, okay, let's go along with the transition, and then years later it turns out that it was a disaster. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I feel bad if I say, oh no, you can't do that, and then years later they do it anyway, and it was exactly what they needed, and they looking at me like I fucking hate you, dad. Like I would just hate to make the wrong call. If I just
Yeah.
knew what was the right thing to do, then it's whatever. But it's not knowing. It's not knowing that bothers me the most. That would bother me the most. If I knew
So,
what was the best option, then it's whatever.
so yeah, I mean, that is definitely a very obvious problem. There's a huge, like, the potential risk, you know, the potential risk of like a full, what's called, I forget if they call it retransition or detransition. So, I mean, I think the first thing is like with detransitioners as a population, most of them are either transitioning towards being non-binary or um, detransitioning due to pressure, like social pressure, like the kind that I faced when because I actually detransitioned at age 23, right? Like, and there were
It's
definitely, there were a number of years where I was presenting myself as like cured, but I definitely was not cured. I was in fact doing the worst I had ever been doing. So I think it's like, with detransition, I think like what's important is to look at each layer of like the group that is detransitioning. So for people who are, presenting as doing like a full reversion to their birth sex and identifying with it, I think that, when you zero in on that group, you do find a lot of questionable cases like mine where the person is, they're not really detransitioned so much as, they might have cracked from the pressure and, you know,
you're saying that you can't just lump all detransitioners into the same category. Some
no,
do it.
no,
Some do it. Some are doing it because they legitimately just okay. I made a mistake. This isn't working for me. But others are doing it more so because, like you said, social pressure and wanting to do it, but not being able to handle everything that comes with it.
yeah, so those are yeah groups within detransitioners as well as people who, there are also, and this is something that is not really captured in a lot of contemporary articles about detransition, but there's a significant chunk of detransitioners who detransition but do not regret their treatment or their relationship with their care provider. So, for example, they might identify as non-binary and no longer take hormone replacement therapy, but they like the changes that they did get from the hormone replacement therapy, and so what happened with them was more, they might have discovered like a non-binary identity that was, so, they're happy and they don't regret their treatment, but they didn't need to continue. So that is also another fraction, a large portion of people who report detransitioning. So the stories that we are usually presented in the media are heavily biased towards the fraction of detransitioners who not only are doing a full reversion to their birth sex, but also regretting the treatment itself, and in a lot of those cases blaming the care providers for not adequately screening them.
I
So I think,
regret I regret my breast, basically.
and so, but I think it's just like when you separate out all the different types of people who detransition, that hardcore, like that worst outcome is really like, it's like 10% of a group that's already 2% of all trans people. I think that as a whole, the concept of detransition is not presented in a balanced way. I think that it's presented as like, I mean, I do think there are people out there who through, might had some maybe really unfortunate medical care. Like my own process was not, I felt like I had a good assessment. I mean, I was made to get a referral letter from a psychologist to get surgery. I guess, I mean, it is like, I mean, there is always, I'm not going to deny, like, there's some risk, yeah, that would happen. I do think that it's kind of like, just sort of like a little bit taken advantage of, I would
Yes,
say.
it's a tricky situation because you could make the wrong call
So,
either
so
way.
I don't think that, teens should be able to start taking HRT like instantaneously. And I don't think that they shouldn't be held to any standard. I think that, the doctors who evaluate children are supposed to like see them for at least 6 months continuously and then physically observe whether they present as their gender that whole time, right? And I think that's like studies show like and if the kid's also reporting, I've been doing this since I was like 5, then you actually have someone who's been consistently trans for maybe like a decade when they get their first appointment.
Okay.
Like, so it's kind of like, I think there's different, it's kind of like a case where like the kids who definitely need it should definitely get it. And the kids who are like on the edge maybe should like be subject to additional wait times. I don't know. Like,
It's tricky. It really is tricky. And then on top of that, you're talking about children who brains still aren't fully developed. People don't really see you as being someone capable of making those types of serious decisions yet. And that's what
well,
makes it even more difficult.
I think the earliest age someone can start HRT in the United States is 14 years old. I think that's the minimum right now.
Okay.
Although it should, but yeah, the modern standards laid out by the Worldwide Professional Association of Transgender Health actually do not give a minimum age. Uh, I'd say that it's really, the doctor, the parent, and the child who make that call. But no, as far as I know, no physicians in the United States will prescribe HRT to someone under 14. However, there is a puberty blocker medication, which they do in some cases approved for children as young as 12, right? So that's not a very long duration that you're eligible to take puberty blockers. And I think, like, that is a case that which is also kind of frustrating because the puberty blocking medication they use is required as part of the medical treatment of trans children in order to protect children from harming themselves by accidentally transitioning, right? Because it's a medication that pauses your puberty and allows you time to consider whether you're actually trans, right? Oh, and it has some side effects, but its only purpose is to protect children who are expressing trans, it protect people from accidentally transitioning. But now the puberty blocker that was required 20 years ago is being attacked as like a, something that shouldn't be offered to children, which is kind of like just really disingenuous because there's no reason. Yeah, I mean, don't give people puberty blockers. You can just start giving them HRT like 2 years earlier. Like theoretically, I mean, what it be trying to say is like they already have like a framework that was established in the early 2000s that has kind of come under scrutiny. I think because there's more children now who are saying that they're trans, which is, I think, what everyone is worried about is like, what if a lot of these children are like just, they saw a TikTok and like they're,
Yeah, 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 exactly. You want to make sure that it's not just the immature mind of a child that doesn't really understand what they're talking about. You want to make sure that this is something that's serious and legitimate for them.
yeah, no, and that's important. I think that, you know, the question is like whether the system that we have is capable of effectively handling that. And, you know, there's this, on the other hand, this sense of panic, like, maybe a bunch, something terrible is brewing, but like, we these clinics that treat trans children have been doing so for, in most cases, almost 20 years or
Okay,
15.
okay. So the next question is, what about your stance on transgenders playing sports with their chosen gender, despite the possibility of them being at a severe advantage or disadvantage based on their natural physiology?
Yeah, so this is like the worst, probably the worst issue for trans people, and like specifically trans women. And, you know, uh, so you definitely like have people who experience male puberty and are going to have a substantial advantage over people who are, assigned female or have XX chromosomes. And uh, the current, I think that there is a universal standard that was not high enough, that only required like 1 year of hormone replacement therapy, and didn't even care about what age people were when they started HRT. So that's definitely like a bit potential problem. Like, you can't have unfairness like that. So you can't have such a lax standard for competitive sports. On the other hand, I think that like one part that the science currently doesn't like really understand is what about, you know, athletes who might have started HRT a lot earlier and who might physically like be comparable in measurements to like their cis peers potentially. I mean, you know, I think that especially when we're talking about like children's sports, like some people might have a better like argument that them being included is not going to threaten the other athletes. So, I think that like, yeah, um, I don't really think, I think all the sports governing bodies need to like set tighter standards. Uh, and maybe like, more research has to be done. I definitely think that if someone has like been on HRT since childhood and is maybe like gotten into athletics like at a later age, then that's different from than someone who like was competing professionally as a male into adulthood and then just
Yeah.
started
At at
HRT.
at 25, I'm transitioning into a woman, and
Yeah,
I'm a cage fighter, by the way. Come fight me. That's yeah. That's that, and I think those are the type of situations that people are the most concerned with. But what you're saying is that
what?
potentially
I'm sorry. What were you gonna say?
potentially with someone who has transitioned at a younger age, their bodies or their physiology wouldn't be so altered according to let's say the example male to female. Their body
Yeah,
would basically be more female than male in terms of like strength, speed, agility, and so it
yeah,
wouldn't be as big of a deal if they were playing basketball with the cis women, right?
yeah. I definitely think that makes a huge difference, and I think that like also in terms of fairness, like someone who's transitioning as an adult and competing is like just like inherently a lot different than someone who transitioned and then later on got good at a sport. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it just sort of like, I mean, progression, what it like, I don't know, sorry, did you disconnect? Are you
No,
still there?
I'm listening. I'm all ears.
So, like, because, I think that if you like like, if you have like male socialization, like, that should also be potentially taken into account, like when thinking about athletics, especially like team sports. So, I don't think it's as simple as like, saying like all trans women should be banned from sports. I definitely think they should strengthen the standards, to prevent any like situations from developing where like an older, male to female transsexual woman is like switching leagues in a sport really quickly and like that's obviously not good. So
How would you feel about the compromise of a transgender league, a transgender specific league?
I think that's dehumanizing. I think that's like not, it's just not really like, I think at that point, you know, like that's not really a good idea. It kind of makes like, it kind of highlights the fact that like being like the disability aspect of being trans, which I have some problems with. I feel like, um, there are other like genetic issues in the Olympics. Like there are intersex athletes. There are, in fact, intersex conditions that give someone the same advantages of being biologically male, despite that person having an appearance of being biologically female. They have like testicles tucked up inside them, like, and have male testosterone levels. I don't know if you are
I've
aware.
heard. I thought they were called hermaphrodites though,
I mean,
or
yeah,
is
there's
it?
like, well, there's different intersex conditions, and
Okay.
like, so, and there are actually way more intersex athletes in the Olympics than trans athletes because there's just, there's very few trans athletes. Like it's not, I mean, and that's like kind of the other, you know, I can definitely see like the need to protect certain like internet like leagues of sports from like, but there are like there are contexts where there's all these trans measures being put into place and there's like no trans athletes competing or have ever been recorded as competing in that sport or league. So it's a little bit like, it's like, let's like see if this actually happens first, because it's not like there's not many people who, I mean, I've heard of some like European athletes who are trying to like enter into a bicycle race. It's like, I mean, I haven't heard of too many trans athletes. There's like
Yeah,
Leah Thomas,
yeah, it's
famous
like
example.
every now and then you'll see one pop up here and there, and then it'll show up in the news articles and whatnot. But you're saying that we haven't seen like a widespread enough participation from them to exactly know what the results are going to be in terms of how would they perform, and would it cause significant issues as far as them playing with cis women or cis men, depending on their sexual identity or gender
Yeah,
identity.
and yeah, and and I already said like, yeah, people who transition young and maybe got into, like, if you're doing some sort of, like, let's say you're like let's say you're playing darts, or like archery, and you're like 36 years old. Like, I mean, there's some sports where it's like, I mean, what about badminton and ping pong? Like, is it impossible for
Non-contact sports, I
is it
think.
impossible for men and women to play a badminton game and
Yeah,
compete? I mean, I don't know, maybe like,
I think people always jump to the extremes of like combat, very physical sports, especially like fighting. That's the main one. Like just imagining again. I'm
well,
25 and just
let
just transition to a woman.
okay, so, well, let me ask you this. What do you think about? I have two things to hit you back. Women in combat roles in the military.
Yes.
Like, that was a battle that was waged almost a decade ago. And, liberals at the time were insistent that all combat roles in sexes, regardless of the fact that women don't perform as well on the, cis women don't perform as well on the physical assessments. And this is, to be in the military. And I, of course, support, like, I mean, I feel like it's sort of a similar issue where, like, I mean, but I don't know. There's more prestige in athletics, maybe. Like,
Maybe cuz then on the flip side, maybe as a cis woman you would think, I don't want to compete against someone who's transgender. Like, I don't want that. Or rather, maybe whether it is or it's not, they're gonna think that that individual has a unfair advantage against them, and
yeah,
and
that's important. That's important. If people perceive that it's not a fair competition, that's going to compromise the entire competition. So, you can't have a system that allows trans people to compete in a way that's going to, like, make everyone pissed off, because, people have to perceive that it's a fair
yeah,
competition.
yeah. Like, are they going to accept it? Because I guess when you look at the military, the way things are now, we just okay, as men, we accept that women are in the military. But then when you're talking about sports, that's a different zone. Are people going to be accepting of that in that particular walk of life, as far as like athletics and those types of competitions? Because just because we accept it in the military, they might not feel the same way
Yeah,
in basketball or something like that.
yeah, and forget. Um, well, yeah, I mean, I think the elephant in the room is like, it's really more about passing than it is about. I mean, like,
Oh
If
yeah.
someone
Oh
someone is like if someone is hard to detect as trans, it makes more like it just makes more sense that it's not going to cause as much issues, and maybe not going to be as much of a problem than
almost
if.
like it's almost like the halo effect in a way. If you see some very feminine, young, pretty trans lady playing with the girl, and she just and they're just blending right in, just not doing
Well,
too much, not doing too little. Maybe people will be more accepting of that versus like 6'4", muscles, masculine.
well, yeah, I mean, so far, I don't think any trans woman, so I don't know if any trans female athletes who won any major competition. I know that Leah Thomas won a division championship in a race, like I don't know, like the 1000 meter, but she did not break a record in that race. But I think, as we like, she was huge, and that was what was so humiliating, or that, that was like it was so problematic. Like, so I definitely, and I've been thinking about this recently. I do think that, like, there are certain, like, people who don't really acknowledge reality, like who push for more inclusive policies when it's going to like backfire, like cause problems. And it's like it's frustrating, definitely.
Yeah, because you know even though you may you may transition and identify as female, the reality is your body in different ways has developed as a man in terms of like
Yeah.
your strength and bone density and things like that. And so you're able to take those things into the sporting arena with individuals who don't have that. And so it's
Yeah.
obvious that you're going to have a an advantage over them. It's kind of like when you hear stories of the high school soccer, like boys soccer team beating the adult professional female soccer team. Like stories like that demonstrate just the difference between men and women in terms of like our physical prowess.
Yeah. But what do you think about like things like like diving, synchronized swimming, cheerleading, uh, like ice dancing, pair ice skating. Like, what
Yeah,
about like sports where you don't physically contest each other, but
I mean, yeah.
but
So
then there are instances where a male body is going to have certain advantages potentially, but then it like, I sometimes wonder, like, are there absolutely zero advantages that cis women have over cis men? Like, is there no physical activity, like, where there's not, like, it's kind of, I think, an interesting question. Like, because I know that, like, there's like, there's all sorts of like, or like acrobatics, dancing, and that kind of thing. Like,
yeah,
where, like, the competition is not exactly tied to maybe scoring points against each other, or it doesn't bring you into direct physical contact. I mean, like, so I think like we do kind of like, there's a lot of focus on, I mean,
I think so. Are you trying to say that maybe we should look at it in terms of
I think what I'm trying to say is we should look at it in terms of where can we include
yeah,
trans people
figuring
rather
out like
than.
yeah, like instead of thinking about the extreme cases, the cage fighter, I'm 25. What about other sports? Like, would it be that big of a deal if for transgenders to be included? Like, in are there certain sports where it just wouldn't be that big of a deal? Where it would be easy for them to just fit in and not have any sort of unfair advantage?
Yeah, there's also debates about, sex, single sex. leagues in chess and like online sports, video games,
Oh yeah.
right? You find debates over all that stuff. You find people arguing that women, can't and shouldn't compete in male leagues. And, you have like feminists arguing for single sex female leagues for
Look,
certain games. You
I
also have like
will I will say this. I would like to see a female fighting game league. I'm not even gonna lie. I would, I would like that. I think because not saying not saying there are no women out there that can compete with the guys, but I think that since there aren't a lot, you don't see them making a name for themselves in that particular realm the way a lot of guys like I could throw out so many male names of like guys that are known for being good at fighting games. And I think if there was a female league, you would have more like standout female names in that particular community. But that's just me throwing something personal out there. I always kind of thought that'd be cute.
No, no, that's really cool. I don't know if that's a challenge because I also really like fighting games. So yeah, I don't know. I agree with you. There's not many. There's like one famous trans Street Fighter player. Forget her name. Who's like who I know of, but there's no one like you know recent. So
I think are you talking about Ricky Ortiz?
Ricky Ortiz, yeah, and there's
That's
yeah.
okay. I know my fighting game players.
So yeah, I dabble, you could say.
Okay, so the next question is, how do you feel about the strange or somewhat strange relationship between transsexuals and what they sometimes refer to as chasers, or the men who pursue them with romantic and or sexual interest? Because to me it seems like on one hand, a lot of transsexuals would like to have relationships with men, but not with someone who specifically targets them, especially not because they just want the girl penis. So, what's your thoughts on that? Transsexuals and chasers.
I think it's kind of an outdated. I think it's like quickly losing relevance. Like the distinction between a chaser and a non-chaser is breaking down, and fewer trans women care so much if the guy. I mean, it's more about like, are they creepy and gross, or are they, you know, you feel good? I mean, I think that it's kind of like starts to lose relevance. It's kind of like asking like, is the person gay or straight, or am I gay or straight? Right? Like, it just like doesn't matter so much if they
As long as they like you and you like them, right?
few trans women.
Oh, you're kind of going out a little bit there.
Sorry, I covered my mic,
Oh yeah.
but it was an accident. Sorry.
Okay. So
Did you?
repeat that.
Oh, so I don't think many trans women or their chasers really care too much, like one way or another. I think it's kind of like a meme or like something that it used to be more of like I definitely think long ago, like when trans women were less well known, you know, this was more of a problem. But like, you know, there's by now there's a lot of men out there on the whole spectrum of like the whole sexuality spectrum who have different different levels of attraction to trans women, and it's not like it's just not black and white whether someone's a chaser or whether they're experimenting or like whether they're just bisexual or whether they are yeah, I mean,
You know,
so
I think part of it, if I had to try to draw a distinction in terms of like what would make someone who's transsexual see you as a chaser versus like a normal guy, I think part of it might be compatibility, because I know
yeah,
certain guys, they like transsexuals, but then like they wanna suck the girl penis. They wanna get
Yeah.
bang, and they don't understand that just because they have a penis doesn't mean that they want to actually use the penis or that they are into being the dominant one during sex. And that's just what I know. I think a lot of it has to do with a lack of compatibility. It's that guy that's like, oh, I like you, but I want you to fuck me. And it's like, I'm not really into that.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's I so far haven't even met any guys like that, but yeah, no, I don't. It's kind of a big misunderstanding of what trans women are and what for. I mean, some like dominant trans women, but they tend to be lesbians though. I'm trying to think if they're like dominant trans women who like men. I mean, probably on 4chan somewhere. I
Because
mean,
I've seen a lot of porn, and definitely you have a a genre or category within transsexual porn where it's like the transsexual being the dominant one over the male. But and I don't know personally, but I just always kind of felt like when I saw that it was either just to play into that niche, or maybe they were just getting paid to do it. But I'm not sure because I'm not in their head. But maybe some are
yeah,
genuinely into it and I don't realize it. But I always just felt like it was more like something like that was paid for or just to cater to that group of men who happen to like that. But I'm not sure how many are actually into doing stuff like that.
yeah. I honestly, I don't know either. Like, part of me wants to say like,
Cause,
oh,
cause, cause you see the same thing even with with men and women. Like some guys have a femdom fetish that they want to be pay pigs and cucks. They want to be tied up and whipped. And to again, just to me, what I see, it looks like when I see that type of stuff, most of the time, it's like it seems like that woman is trying to cater to what the man wants and might even be profiting from putting herself in that niche. Whether she's really like dominant or not, she can profit from fulfilling that niche for the group of men who look for stuff like that.
yeah. I mean, that stuff's really funny. I'm not gonna lie. Um, yeah. Well, as for whether she's dominant or not, that's definitely very dominant behavior. It's maybe a little bit toxic because you shouldn't be forming relationships with people just to exploit, control, and harm them. But it's definitely dominant, I think, like to take people's money and not
Yeah.
give them anything.
yeah, yeah, oh, for sure. It's but I guess like that's dominant in one way. I'm saying like, whether you're sexually,
I
truly
would
sexually dominant.
I'm very submissive. I would never, not to be weird in the chat, but I would never want a pay pig or a simp or a guy who's gonna be like that. It's just gross to me. Like I want,
Yeah, and I can't imagine that most women would really be attracted to a guy like that. And that's why I've always questioned it. And I think like when I look at transsexuals who top and are dominant, I just wonder if it's kind of the same thing where they're just doing it for the bucks, or they're just
well,
trying, But I just don't know.
I mean, if it's really profitable, I might consider like, making a leather outfit and like trying to like earn some money on the side. Like,
You, you would do it for the cash.
I mean, like, I don't know. Well, that's the thing. I make good money doing what I do, and like, I don't have to do sex work. My family members, my parents used to always tell me like that the only way you would maybe be able to make a living if you're trans was like through prostitution. And so I don't, I would have to earn a lot of money to make it like worth my hourly, like worth my time. But it does sound kind of fun, especially if you do like gain a fascination for, or so, maybe some women, I don't know, maybe it's like something that some people genuinely like or like would branch out into. I don't know.
Do you think that because you brought it up, I didn't have this written down, but do you think that regarding transsexuals, do you think there is more of a tendency for them to get into sex work as opposed to trying to make money in more conventional ways?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, um, yeah, I think there's a lot of, yeah, I think historically there's been a lot of, you know, there's a lot of prevalence of drug abuse and sex work in the trans community. And I think there's a lot of uh, pressures that form that drive people towards that, such as like being closeted is a big one, being in fear of violence from family members, uh, like also like there's a I'm trying to organize my thoughts clearly. I do think, yeah, like historically, it's something that you would see a lot, and so employ protections, legal protections in employment, and like um, pathways into like legitimate work is extremely important for trans people as like a entire community
Yeah,
to
and I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not sure, but maybe part of it is just wanting to be in an environment where you feel more comfortable and in control. And if you're someone working in sex work and you make a lot of money, you can go pretty much where you want to go and surround yourself with the type of people that you want to be around. Like, you're not forced to go work at the local gas station where you're going to be seeing people who aren't as understanding of your situation or your sexual identity, and so you got to deal with a lot of
exactly.
confusion and awkwardness, as
Yeah.
opposed to being a sex worker where you're in control of your environment and who is around you and who you want to be around.
Yes, that's extremely perceptive. It's a refuge. Like, a lot of closeted trans people and people of like non-binary, LGBT identities, like often, are you often find them in fetish communities, or they, while struggling, they, are in sex work. Part of why trans people, you know, along with IV drug users, like end up in sex work. But like, uh, sorry, I lost my train of thought. But yeah,
No, 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 it's fine.
yeah,
Um, Let me get to the next question.
yeah.
Okay, and I think we kind of touched this a little bit earlier, but now we can kind of laser focus on it. One thing I find interesting is that while trans acceptance is growing, it seems to me that men who date or have sex with transsexuals are still considered gay or fags by most people. Don't you
Hmm.
think? Don't you think it's sort of contradictory that people will accept you as a woman but question the sexuality of the men who date transsexuals?
Yeah, I think it's really frustrating. It can be really frustrating. Like my sister and my female friends do that to me a lot. Like when I talk about a guy who's into me, if I say that they happen to identify as straight, they always like get tilted about that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and I mean, there are men of all three orientations who will go after trans women at times. So it's really not like it's really it's kind of like a fishbowl effect. It's the kind of thing that doesn't really matter so much to trans people. It's like a impression people get on the outside. I mean, some guys who like trans women are, gay, and some guys who like trans women are straight. Like you can, when you meet them, you can tell which they are. It's not, it's just, it's, yeah, it's not really so much an issue, I guess. You know, I think the main issue with dating as a trans person is finding someone who, um, finding someone who is willing to go the distance with you and who's able to understand your circumstances.
Yeah, because I like I've noticed that a lot of guys who have a thing for transsexuals or whatnot, like it's like we tend not to be like involved as far as like the LGBT community and pride and all that because like I look at someone like myself, I'm I've pretty much been raised for most of my life feeling like I was 100% heterosexual. So the way I look at my sexuality and everything is kind of different. Like I don't look at my sexuality as something to be proud of or to celebrate and things like that. Like I'm not with the flags and and things like that. And then you have some guys who they have a thing for transsexuals, but then they want to keep it on the down low. And so it's like they want to play around, but they wouldn't want to actually have a serious relationship with someone who is trans. Or maybe they would, but then they're not comfortable enough to really do that out in the open. And so I would just imagine that's the issue where you can find guys to hook up with and maybe have a friends with benefits situation with, but finding somebody who is attracted to you but is also going to stand beside you, and again, some people are just gonna look at you. Oh, look at this gay dude dating the you got to deal with that. Everybody's not going to look at it the way you see it or the way it is. You got
Exact
to
situation. Yeah.
you got to deal with that. And so it's like, and I think a lot of guys, just can't really handle that, but they still want to get some of the girl penis. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're spot on. I mean, it's definitely true. It's kind of frustrating because, like I it it kind of underlines how like frat I don't want to sound overly dramatic, but like aren't, men supposed to be like strong and like tough and like not care what other people think, but like no, yeah, it's a huge problem. It's like, you
yeah,
know,
like I
we could
saw
share everything.
I saw this. There was this incident where I don't know if you're aware of this, but have you ever heard of Adam 22?
Adam 22.
Oh, never mind it. But he's like a hip hop podcaster, and someone on his crew, it came out that he hooked up with a transsexual, and so of course, like now everybody wants to confront him about it, and what's your side of the story, and now on one hand he admitted it, like yeah I did it, I was I was experimenting, but at the same time it was like he was so adamant about saying like I didn't suck dick, I didn't get fucked. It's like he felt like that was the most important thing to put out there. Like just making sure like I don't want you guys to look at me like I'm out here sucking sucking dick and so I think
I can actually, yeah,
yeah, and
I can. Sorry, didn't
when
want to go.
when I see that, to me again it just kind of shows that like there's still like this sense of I have to protect my masculine image. I got to make sure they know I didn't do even though I was with this person. You got to know that I didn't do this, that, and the third. And I just thought to me it just seemed kind of weird how adamant he was about it. Like
Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like I understand. I mean, because it's similar to like the girl that they're with. If she's trans, maybe she's really insecure about her femininity, and she wants to really reassure the world that she is heterosexual and is like not topping the guy,
yeah,
like
and
so.
see,
I mean,
maybe I'm just projecting because I kind of just feel like if I was in the same situation, I wouldn't go out of my way to say something like that. I'd be like, yeah, I fucked that bitch. I'm not gonna try to like paint myself to be, because to me, I think it kind of just shows insecurity. Is what I'm saying. Like whether I did it or not, I'm not gonna go out of my way to say this is what I did, this is what I didn't do. I think that just shows a certain level of insecurity, and I
yeah.
think that and again, I'm just projecting like how I am. I wouldn't do no
Well,
shit like that.
different men are definitely different. I mean, some people, and men and women. I mean, some people are just more fixated on like whether they're always a top or a bottom or
Yeah.
submissive or dominant, you know. Or I mean, for some people, it's just they're neurotic about it. I mean, people are. I think everyone is neurotic about sex. Straight, gay, trans. Like, everyone has some things they haven't fully like explored maybe, or like some things that they're thinking about that don't match up with
Yeah.
uh mainstream expectations.
Yeah. I'm kind of in a weird, this is just my own personal information, but I'm kind of in a weird zone because I'm 30 years old, but I'm still a virgin. I've never actually had sex with anything, with anything.
Oh,
So yeah, like, so my, I think for me, the reason why I kind of think the way that I do is that at a young age, I kind of separated myself from really, um, like being so tied up in like my sexual identity and what it means about me, because like one thing I remember specifically is that as a man growing up, there's the idea that you got to be having sex, you got to rush into having sex, you're not a man
yeah,
until you're having sex. And I
yeah,
always rejected those ideas. I pretty much embraced being single. I embraced being a virgin, and so I think like that's why in my mind I don't really trip over like trying to prove myself in terms of like sex or what I should and shouldn't like, because my sense of identity just isn't tied up in stuff like that.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's uh definitely a pretty decent strategy. I mean, because a lot of people who are having sex early are just kind of having terrible sex and flailing around. So, like, I mean, I
I
don't
think
have,
I think
yeah.
I probably end up doing the same thing if I ever start having sex. I probably be just as bad because you got to start somewhere, right?
Well, yeah, and I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I was for several years like I had multi-year long periods where I'd never had sex when I was pre-transition. So, you know, uh, like I kind of know what it's like to. I mean, it was kind of different because I had different reasons for not being sexually active. But I feel like I didn't really start my actual sex life until I was 30. 30.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
but yeah. I mean, like I had some sexual encounters and actually a decent amount, but like not ones that were particularly relevant or good, like in my overall development.
So the next question is, in your experience and opinion, for all the chasers out there, or just men who may be interested in dating someone who's trans, what are the keys to victory in this endeavor? What are the do's and don'ts of trying to date someone who's transsexual?
Yeah, so I would just say find common interests. A lot of trans women are autistic, and a lot of them are gonna, have a lot of nervous energy. So, I video games, um, you know, uh, board games, pool, darts, tabletop. That's what works on me. I don't know. So common interests are good. You want icebreaker activities, and you want to be able to meet someone in a context that is not inherently sexual, and that that's really crucial for putting a lot of women at ease. And I think like trans people are often struggling with trauma where they are, trying to date and um, they're sensitive to not being treated like women, and one of the things they're sensitive to is being expected to sexually, be ready to go too quickly, if you understand what I mean. So it's good to, if you can.
Like maybe like some guys go into dealing with someone who's transsexual. Like okay, like most men know dealing with women that it's a process before you start having sex. A lot of time, not all the time, but men kind of have it trained into their head that we got to go on dates and we got to kind of get to know each other. She might shit test me. She might play some games. It's a process for a lot of guys before they end up having sex. But maybe someone who's into transsexuals, they might feel like it should just be instantaneous, like no courtship, no dating, no none of that.
Yeah, or they might just, maybe they're just going into it with a more sexual mindset. Like one thing a lot of trans women don't like is guys who start trying to talk about sex too quickly or too fast. Uh, not everyone, obviously, but some people. Um,
Like
and
maybe they're just
yeah,
looking for a hookup and they're being more aggressive towards someone who's transsexual than they would normally be towards a cis woman.
yeah, yeah. And I would also say, yeah, and that kind of plays into another do is, if you take a trans girl out in public, if that's like an option, you'll like win a lot of point, or you'll get like double points for that because um, you know, even if you're just sort of like faking it, or like even if it's like maybe a difficult experience, because a lot of trans people want to have these experiences, just test the waters of what it would feel like to date someone, or is like wondering like what it would be like to like go out and do this, or like go to the movies. A lot of us didn't have that, you know, before.
Yeah, like
So,
so
yeah.
you're saying to be the type of guy that's comfortable enough with yourself and your attractions to, you're not just gonna hook up with them on the down low. You'll take
Yeah.
them out to the movies. You'll walk hand in hand with them in the mall. You'll claim them like, oh, this is me right
Well,
here. you know.
you don't even, I mean, that's kind of like, I think, some of those gestures are a little bit extreme, but like you can also just go with some trans girl to do some normal thing, and maybe, you're not like, I mean, it's like, you can read the room, and like maybe you're not going to be holding hands or doing anything like that. But if you just like go out somewhere, like, she's probably, probably, unless she's like been transitioned like many years, she's probably like, it's she's probably more focused on what other people think of her than like, you know, what I'm saying is like, just going out helps, because it helps trans people to have social experiences, like, y- in our, like, I don't know, like when we meet new people who didn't know our pre-transition selves, it's like really good for us to just like hang out with them in a normal everyday setting. It kind of gives us a lot of like self-actualization or self-confidence, like the feeling that you are real, that you exist.
Yeah, like
So,
so you're saying like you might have felt most comfortable in the comfort of your own home or like very specific places, and you're saying like just to be with somebody where you're a couple or you guys are seeing each other and you do like the basic things uh like going to the grocery store or just being out in public together and maybe being with them, being with somebody who accepts you and somebody who's attracted to you makes you feel more confident when
yeah,
you're in those social situations. You have somebody with you that is has your back and sees you in a good light. You don't feel like
yeah,
alone. You don't feel
yeah,
completely alone, and then you got so much on your mind already because of your situation. Is and wondering, oh, what is he thinking? Does she know? And this, that, and the third, and just having like a man by your side that's accepting of you and is with you. I would imagine that would ease the burdens a little bit.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I think that yeah, a lot of like trans women are like very like kind of like desert cactuses or like kind of like starved of just like starved of affection. Maybe not showing it outwardly, but or maybe not even affection, are just maybe more unsteady. Maybe they've only been transitioned for 1 or 2 or 3 years, and it's like, you know, they're not going to be hung up on like a long-term relationship, but they will really appreciate like just doing basic things like uh just like sort of how you might have. I mean, I guess you maybe avoided these, but like how like high schoolers might like have like those relationships where they don't actually have sex because their parents don't allow it. They just like go on dates and sort of hang out.
Yeah, I did. I was I was not very good with women, to say the least.
It's just like
But
dating my friends at that age, so.
yeah, but yeah, just because it's already gonna be difficult for you to feel comfortable in social situations as it is, and having somebody having somebody there that's kind of like, I don't know if you would say like a support system, but you have like somebody is there that is with you. Somebody is there that is not only accepting of you, but can help you take your mind off of worrying about what other people are thinking, because you guys are interacting and doing things together. You're laughing and communicating and whatnot, so you're not just stuck in your head the whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so this is now me. I you know I haven't really thought too deeply about the whole like the whole idea of someone transitioning from one sex to another is honestly just beyond me, and really I don't care, uh, but I'm kind of just simple in the way that I think, right? Where it's um, like a man is a man, a woman is a woman, and I understand that uh, obviously the concept of male to female transitioning, etc. But I guess I'm just kind of stuck in like the physical aspect of just, okay, male body, you are male, female body, you are female. But at the same time, I don't care to really like go hard in terms of trying to convince somebody otherwise. I just don't care about the whole pronoun aspect of it. I guess that's how I would put it. But in your own words, how do you like just describe the feeling of like, okay, I'm born as a male, or I have a male body, but I feel like I'm a woman. I want to transition into a woman. I believe I'm a woman. What does that feel like? Because I can't really wrap my head around it, and maybe that's just because I'm not trans. But try to get me to understand that aspect of it.
Well, I mean, yeah, this is like this is a common focal point, I think, of trans skepticism. Um, it's a very hard question to answer. A lot of people, I one sort of phrase that I like to sort of point to is like, I don't feel like I don't feel like I want to be a woman or ever wanted to be a woman or to be trans. I feel like it just
You can
is. have been that.
that's just how you feel. That's just how you are. Is what you're saying.
And then the other thing I would say is, dysphoria is a very consistent, it's a symptom that crops up in people in a way that is like documented such that it is not like a social contagion spreading on TikTok. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
you,
that's the aspect of it that I can understand. Is like the not feeling like uh, you may be in the correct body or frame or whatnot. Um, but again, not being trans, again, I don't think I could ever fully just like I just don't feel like I can fully understand it. That's why I'm asking you just to express it the best way that you
do
can.
you do you enjoy any like physical activities?
Yeah, like I work out. I like running, doing push-ups, and just
Why do
working out in general. Huh?
why do you like doing that stuff?
Um, it makes me feel good.
Okay, why?
Well, I think with working out, it releases endorphins in the brain. It's like a chemical reaction that happens in the brain when you work out, and that's the science behind it, I believe.
You work out like just to make your brain feel good. Like it has nothing to do with your body or your body image.
Um, initially it did. Initially, it was more about body image, but then as I kept doing it, it's just you know just I learned that working out felt good beyond making your body look better.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think it's worth thinking about. One thing I definitely noticed is that working out never felt good at all, prior to being on HRT. Like, rather than having that good feeling of whatever the endorphins that you were talking about just now,
I'm not a
do
scientist. I'm just throwing I'm just throwing that out there into endorphins. Is all I know.
whatever what I'm just saying, whatever those endorphins were doing is like probably pretty good for you. Um, I think it's good, you know, for trans people as well to get physical exercise. And I think that that's an example of something where physical dysphoria will usually inhibit you from exercising because you'll feel really bad doing it. Like, and, you know, a lot of people with pre-transition or repressing people will tend to be, computer bound, like shut-ins, like to spend a lot of time online, trying to avoid physical activities or like being seen um, in public. But I mean, yeah.
That
So,
does it only pertain to like exercising, or are you talking about like do you get dysphoria in like just any type of activity? It just things just didn't feel right for you. Is what you're saying?
well, I mean, I think exercising is really, it's like a very physical activity and it's very connected to how people feel. And I think that's like an example of like where you can see the symptom and like describe the feeling most physically. Like imagine if you didn't get that feeling of enjoyment from exercising. And then like another, you know, I don't, have you ever like had a surgery or had a procedure where you had like chronic pain afterwards?
Oh, nah.
Okay. I mean, that's another potential example because, a lot of there are certain times where people have you know, maybe they have a prescription pain medication because they have pain from something that is it's just distracting them. Like, uh, it's keeping them from doing other activities. I mean, like, so there's other, like maybe, there's other sort of things you can think of like dancing, going to the beach, swimming, times where you have to either move physically or, you know, ex- expose your, just like so there are certain times where like, it's just like, you can't enjoy activities because your body is sort of rebelling against you and doing things that are causing you distress, like specifically with secondary sex, like
Yeah,
developing.
yeah. Like if you have bad knees or something, a bad back.
Yeah. I mean, the relief that most, when trans people who have dysphoria take HRT, they get, you know, they usually get a lot of relief of, they get like a physical sense of relief, like just like like it's, for example, when you like look in the mirror in the morning, like while showering or whatever, like, um, there's a very marked, there's a big like contrast, like, uh, if you have gender dysphoria, like for example, facial hair is going to like really, really,
Oh
it's
yeah,
going to cause
like
problems because you touch your face a lot, you're reminded of it a lot, you see it, it's like kind of defines what you look like, right? It defines how people perceive you.
yeah. So for someone who's trans, facial hair would be like bad acne
Yeah,
for
exactly.
a normal person.
Yeah, or like, yeah, exactly. Or like yeah, I think that's a very good way of describing it. Like, um, but like, it's the difficult thing is it's really not easy to define. People report different levels of dysphoria, and it's a subjective experience because being a woman is not about facial hair or your bone structure or stuff like that. I mean, not everyone has the same issues. Not everyone feels dysphoria at the same time. There are some, I'm sure like some athletic trans women, maybe athletics is their escape and they just don't think about gender when they're doing it. I don't know. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
like,
you kind of just gave me a thought now, though. I think you put it very well because with the whole facial hair example, because now I'm thinking like, what if I had like G cup breasts? I'd be very uncomfortable if I had some big old titties, and and um and I'm it's how do I say it? It's what you're saying is you feel or trans people tend to feel very uncomfortable with the maleness of their body, the masculinity of their body.
yeah.
They just feel extremely uncomfortable with that.
Oh yeah, and it starts like it and it progresses in a very similar way. So when you start out at the beginning of puberty, you don't have physical dysphoria yet when you're a little kid because your body is still more or less, I mean there's some minor like bone structure things, but more or less it's like very similar, identical to female peers. But as soon as you gain the awareness that you are going to grow into a man, you begin to have fear and cycle, you begin to experience depression as and gender dysphoria at that point. And um, once you begin to actually develop in puberty, you begin to get physical dysphoria symptoms. Like developing breasts for female to male transsexuals in puberty will feel very terrible,
Yeah,
and
I
um,
I would hate that. I don't. I would not want. I would not want to have no titties.
yeah. So, so there is a progression, and if trans people receive treatment, you know, earlier, they usually can get rid of all of the physical symptoms of dysphoria. And that is not guaranteed for people who transition later. Um, it gets much harder to get rid of the
Yeah.
physical symptoms.
Not like that. That's probably the best way anybody ever described it to me. Because once I started imagining having again breasts and stuff, for me having big breasts would be a nightmare. For a woman, it would make her feel more confident. It would make her feel more womanly, and oh, I'm a beautiful big breasted woman. Or
Yeah,
like
and I
for a woman, having a flat butt makes her feel less feminine, whereas for a male, we're not expected to have big protruding butts like women. So maybe that's
yeah,
kind of like what it feels like. Like if I all of a sudden had breasts and all these different things, I feel very uncomfortable with that.
yeah, and that is what it feels like. And there's been lots of scientific experiments that have supported this. For example, it's been proven that if you try to force a child into a different gender randomly at birth, that child is going to rebel and return back to their assigned gender, right? But whereas when children self-report symptoms of dysphoria for years and then go on to transition teens or as adults, uh, it's like the opposite is happening. Like they're refusing to comply with their assigned gender. So I mean, there is scientific data that has pointed to a disconnect or a difference between your psychological gender identity and your biological sex. I think that it kind of develops when you're in the womb. I think that, you have structural differences in your brain that are actually measurable. And I've like, there are articles out there like about specifically which brain structures are different in transsexual people and also examining how transsexual brains become change under the influence of HRT. Um, Not to launch into all of that or like delve into the specifics, like right, but there's like there is there is a large body of scientific evidence that supports trans medicine. I mean, there are unanswered questions, and there are questions like, you know what, is it possible to go too far or something like that or not. On the other hand, you have people who are like, they just look, sound, and act like the opposite sex from a very young age, and that it's like it's like they definitely seem like they sort of organically existed that way.
You
Yeah.
know, um, um, nowadays trans acceptance is seems to be growing, but you still have people who are, I wouldn't say like people who like would hate someone like you, but they would just stand on, a man is a man, a woman is one. Like they don't believe in the idea of actually being able to transition. And you obviously understand that you're not gonna be able to convince everyone of this. Do you
Hmm.
think there could be a, like, because this is what I don't like when I look at our culture. It seems like people are so quick to like hate each other because we might disagree on something, and a lot of times I just don't see why we can't agree to disagree or have our particular beliefs but still respect each other. Like do you expect everyone to look at gender the same way as you do, or do you think that there can be a difference of opinion in terms of how you feel about gender versus how somebody else feels about gender? Like maybe somebody says, I don't believe in someone being able to transition, but still, that's just what I believe. Like, I don't hate you, I just believe this. Do you think, like, again, can there be peace between like these opposing viewpoints?
It's a difficult question. Like, it's probably going to be a issue for a long time. I think the issue of like children is, you know, children's medical care is like the big flashpoint, like in terms of like people's right to disagree versus the autonomy of others, or like where exactly do you draw the line? You
Yeah,
know?
because
So
it's like, okay, we can agree to disagree, but we still have to figure out, okay, should a male to female transsexual, can they go to a female bathroom?
yeah,
Should we allow children to train? That's where there's always gonna be heat, because now shit is getting, it's no longer just my opinion versus yours. Now we're talking about taking action in the real
yeah,
world and allowing someone to do something that might impose, that I feel like you're imposing on me, and then you feel like I'm imposing on you, and that's where all the trouble begins.
yeah. Well, and I personally think that there is almost always, if not always, a common sense solution that meets everyone's needs. I mean, in the bathroom instance, you can just have the wheelchair pregnant, the middle bathroom that anyone can go into, right? Like, you seen those? Like,
So wait, you saying like you would have what, a male
like
bathroom, a female?
and then like, I mean, haven't you seen the public bathrooms where there's like it's specifically for people with disabilities, nursing and pregnant women, people who need more space, the
I've ne-
single
I've never seen that. I've only seen the male and or female bathroom. I've never seen that.
what city do you? Well, okay. I mean, so you tend to see it a lot in like public, you know, facilities. Like,
I don't think I live in a very progressive area, probably. So maybe that's it. But I've never seen that.
well,
All I see is, the basic male over here, female over there's bathrooms.
what about like buses and airplanes where there's like bathrooms or
One bathroom.
yeah. Well. So what I'm saying is like there's a way you could have a third bathroom that was designated as like people of both sexes. I mean, but here's the thing, like, you know, if a trans person passes, and they use the restroom, no one is gonna, I mean, no one will notice, or, it just happens every day. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just,
but then what about the ones that don't pass, and then people are gonna feel like, should I not have that same privilege just because I transition late, or you know I'm more
yeah.
masculine? It's like it's still kind of an ugly situation, because now you're like, okay, well, only the pretty ones only the pretty ones can go, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like, I wasn't saying that's a solution to the problem. I was just
it's
saying like,
it's a reality that if you pass, it doesn't really matter.
well, that's I mean, for trans people, most of us have no illusions about that fact. We will spare nothing to pass, like whether it takes like surgery, like wherever you have to go, whatever you have to do. Um,
Yeah,
like,
there's somebody that I follow on Twitter that's transsexual, and they just got facial surgery to make their face appear uh, more feminine, and I was a little bit surprised. I was like, "Oh, this damn! Like they not playing. Like they really about this shit."
Yeah, I mean, because yeah, when you pass, like it's just a different experience. Like everything is less stressful.
Yeah, you know, it kind of got me thinking before we were talking about like working out and working out, but also you know how you feel more or less comfortable based on like your body and how it is. And you know, I noticed just myself as a man, you know, once I got into working out and seeing my body develop, you know, more like take on more masculinity, more muscles, and you know the shoulders start to pop out. Like I just like all of that just adds to me feeling better.
Yeah,
Like
well, that's
just
exactly if you can
yeah,
if you can recognize that. So that's exactly, trans people have that exact same thing, except it's for the wrong sex. And like that's the whole thing that is going on. And, like you have it too. It's there. It's just it's synchronized with your
yeah.
biological self.
Yes. All right.
So when
Yeah. And see, that's why I again the way you put it was just worked perfectly because I don't think I've ever really thought of it in terms of how I would feel if I all of a sudden started having these all these feminine features. Like I think I'd be very uncomfortable.
yeah, I mean, and and that's just like, so if you start transitioning early enough and have the appropriate, I mean, and it's not even based on time. I mean, a lot of people can transition later or have genetic advantages, but like if you receive the appropriate care and support and can like get to the point where you pass, like you kind of can cure your gender dysphoria and you can just sort of go blend in with the rest of humanity. And people do that. Like, and it can be very hard to detect, if someone has a good surgery, like it can, and if they started early and their body is like fully gone through, like so it's kind of like, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. There's a spectrum of, it's like a spectrum of people, I guess, and um like you don't, I mean, one thing people sort of forget is you don't notice trans people if they are succeeding at being trans, right? Because they're like, you know, and like me personally, I'm like not, I don't do any sex work or go out in public. I don't have social media. You know, I, it's not like I never get clocked, but I do pass fairly well. And uh, it's like the point is not to be accepted as trans. The point is to sort of just fix what's wrong with you and like live a normal life and like, get away from it. Um, so, and it's really important to give people the ability to do that because, you know, like my whole like life was really messed up and there's a lot like before I transitioned, there was like a lot of just like a lot of risk. It was just, it was really chaotic. Like, so it was, I think like, it's like, it can be like hazardous to deny like people who are affirmatively trans, like medical treatment. In most cases, that's going to, you know, that's going to cause that person to turn to substance abuse or other, it's going to aggravate other problems.
So, how do you feel about the whole pronoun issue? And that kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, as far as like being able to agree to disagree because I think a lot of people are kind of like they don't care so much about someone dressing or altering their body the way that they want. But when it comes time to if I know you were born as a man, you know I'm going to address you as such, regardless of what you look like. Like, what do you think about that particular issue regarding transsexuals, the whole pronoun thing?
I think it's like, um, how to put it? I think it's really overhyped because, as we were discussing at the beginning of the call, very few people have the balls to like actually misgender someone who doesn't want to be misgendered. You know what I mean? In a social setting, it's like, for one thing, it's just something a lot of people won't do. That they will go along with what they feel. You know what I'm saying? Like, they might disagree with it, but but
Well, you notice I haven't done that this whole conversation.
yeah. Well, I mean, like, because it's just like it's not convenient for interacting in, like, especially working and like doing commerce, going to showing up at a job, or like, being a customer somewhere, like, it's not something people generally actually do. So it's something people tend to, write on the internet about, like, oh, I don't want to be forced to, blah, use word. But it's like, are you actually going to make yourself, like, call attention to yourself like that and do, because a lot of times when you encounter a trans person, maybe you'll accidentally gender them correctly before you notice that they're trans, right? And like, or maybe you will, like, maybe you just won't notice until like you find out later, like, so yeah. I mean, a lot of times you're going to be in a position of having to, like, and get in into a bunch of people like around you that, I mean, like, in actual situations, it'll be pretty confusing a lot of the time if you're trying to, like, get someone to realize that you're misgendering them. It can happen, like, if you have like the lead time and it's like the right context and you get like a clear shot at someone. But like, how often do you get to, like, refer to a random person's by pronouns? It's like, it doesn't happen too often. It's like usually when you're in like a setting, like a work or school setting, where you are like in a group and talking with different people about someone. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, I'm I don't know how much of an issue it seems like something people write about to try to, like, trigger people on the internet. As far as it's like, yeah, people have, what I will say this, I did try to go by they them pronouns for a few years, and it is pretty impossible to get the wider world to use they them pronouns. But
Yeah,
I have never had any issues getting she her pronouns, even from really uptight conservatives, right? Like,
yeah.
don't people aren't as willing to start shit as they pretend they are on the
Yeah,
internet. That's
and me, again, I'm Mr. Apple is an apple, orange is orange, but I just like I just avoid doing it because it's like if it's not difficult to avoid doing it and potentially like it's just like I kind of feel like if I'm being so adamant about it, like I'm trying to start some shit, and I'm never trying to start some shit, and so I guess my position is just like it's easy to avoid uh doing it, and so I just avoid even going there. Period. I don't know how many people are going to just do it specifically to agitate someone. and I'd rather just avoid agitating somebody if I can, and it's not some big, skin off my back. But again, and it's just the way I think. I'm just so, I guess, maybe I'm behind the times. Maybe I'm not progressive enough. But you know, as someone who's definitely attracted to transsexuals, I've never really been one that's really so invested in the gender aspect of it. It's just like, to me, feminine, like femininity and cuteness and whatnot is more so what interests me about it. It's like, I just see it as, okay, this person is very feminine. I like femininity, as opposed to the whole gender aspect of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, gender is, it's it's not a, it's like a fuzzy concept. I mean, and sex is, more definite than gender, but there's also things with like, intersex conditions and other medical conditions, like, androgen insensitivity syndrome is one thing that has been talked about. Like, people have theorized that exposure to estrogen, increased amounts of estrogen, synthetic estrogen in the womb from types of birth control, causes people, both sexes, male and female fetuses, to um, be less responsive to endogenous sex hormones, estrogen and testosterone, and um, then either feminize or masculinize. The brain feminizes or masculinizes in the opposite direction of the fetus's biology. So like um so uh, uh, so yeah, I guess, like, so gender and sex do have, like, they both have like a biological, I mean, I get tripped up over myself sometimes, but like, there's like, some biological uh factors, as well as people's expression or perception of those things. Like, in Thailand, they have like a lot more like a lot more gender categories, like, than Western countries. Like, so who knows, like, how many genders there actually are. I mean, in most cultures are like, there's male and female gender idea, like, you grow up into a man or a woman, and then there's different sort of types that you could be. But there are some cultures with many more sub categories of gender, like, so.
And see, and just be honest, like once you start getting into all that, I mean, I get completely lost, because I'm just, I'm just kind of simple minded when it comes to that sort of thing, I guess. But at the same time, I just don't take it too seriously. It's like, regardless of what somebody's beliefs are or opinion is regarding this particular subject, I don't like. I just don't feel strongly about it. I guess that's more so what it is. Like,
Well,
regardless
yeah,
of how you feel, like, you might feel differently from me, but I don't see you less because of that. Like, or I don't see you as less because of that. Like, I still, respect you as a human being. You know,
yeah.
I'm not gonna,
And
like,
that's,
I'm not gonna wig out, or like, I just don't see it as something worth arguing about or fussing about, because I don't see you as, or anybody else who thinks differently from me, as like, okay, they're worse than me or I'm better than them. It's just, I just look at shit differently.
yeah. And I don't really care I just think like, free access to medical treatment is essential to give people like the autonomy. I think like medical science is has done a lot of work to document and explore, what trans people are. And I think that, we it's good if like, I don't really like this whole idea of like people saying that, like I do think there's some tension these days between like, you know, people are trying to demedicalize being trans or saying you don't need dysphoria to be trans. It's like getting and there's reasons for that. I do think that um it's important for, trans people to have some sort of medical assessment, and also to have regulations in place that keep people from just like switching their name and gender really quickly, or going, being like a rapist and just saying you're a woman randomly, and do, being allowed to do something like that, like, or saying, I want to go and be in a foot cage match, as you were saying earlier. I think that like it's just like, yeah, I mean, you will have toxic people
Yeah,
who
like
should be.
it's possible to abuse the concept, because you'll see some people joke like I'm trans dog or something, I'm trans wolf. Like, is it gonna get to that extreme? Could
I mean, we haven't seen. I mean, trans people have been. Trans people have been around for many decades. You don't have a bunch of people going around saying that they are transracial, for example. Like, there's like a scare that people there's been a scare that people might start doing that, might start like that the next, there was like Rachel Dolezal, but like you only see someone do that like once in a while, like some
yeah,
extremely mentally ill person
and it's
is like,
it's it's usually played for jokes too. Like, oh, this is obviously ridiculous, basically.
so I don't think that like, I think that just like, people just have a good grasp of like what's true and what's not. And there are unfortunate instances where there's like a trans person who's really in a, done, is like not in their not staying in their lane, um or yeah. So
So I have we're about to wrap this up. I know it's been kind of lengthy. Um, these are the easiest questions here. Just real quick. What are your three favorite hobbies?
okay, sorry, I'm eating some fried rice. Arcade fighting games.
Oh yeah,
um
awesome. Hold up.
yeah.
What's your favorite fighting game?
Blaze Blue Central Fiction.
Okay.
Yeah, I like, Street Fighter.
Which one?
I like, all of them, like Street Fighter, Turbo, Alpha 3, Third Strike, Street Fighter 5.
Third Strike.
Um, yeah,
Third
I like,
Strike. Yeah, we're cool now.
yeah,
I was playing that today.
I like Xrd. I like, I don't really like Strive that much. I really like Skullgirls. No, I own a lot of them.
I think my favorite has got to be Dragon Ball Fighters. It's like Dragon Ball Fighters and Third Strike, like in the same about in the same tier for me as far as like being my favorites.
Yeah, I don't, I've tried to get into Fighter Z. I haven't gotten into it yet, but I might play it some more. Oh,
So
okay. Hobbies,
arcade.
yeah. So arcade fighting games. I really like tabletop games,
Uh,
Dungeons and Dragons.
okay.
And I'm trying to think my third hobby. It's kind of like the free space a little bit. Um I don't know. I've had different hobbies. Like I maintain a self-sustaining, like eco-friendly aquarium, and I try to. My third hobby. I have to have something, right? Like I would say
Yeah,
probably like makeup. Like I really want to get. I mean, I do my makeup every day, and I this year I want to get good at like more sophisticated like eye makeup stuff. Um, so I don't know if that's a hobby because I kind of just do
yeah,
it
yeah,
because I
no,
feel
yeah,
like I
no.
do.
That's yeah. I would throw it in there. I've seen some pretty impressive things that people can do with makeup on like
I would say it's kind of like halfway between like exercising, which I don't really consider a hobby. I just do it like I just like, since I've transitioned, I like exercising, I like just like whether it's going to the gym or like build, exercising in my own home or like the gym in my apartment building, like, or taking a hike, like, um so yeah. But makeup is kind of like it's like I'm interested in it, but it's also like I feel like there's pressure to wear it that is a little bit frustrating at times, like especially when I'm running late, I can't put it on, It's like um people do respond. Yeah, I mean people not to make this into a whole another thread, but um yeah, I guess so that's good for three hobbies. But traditionally fighting games, tabletop games. I used to be really into JRPGs, but I think I might have like gotten played out after like 5 years. So
okay.
um,
So this is the last question.
okay.
Did you enjoy our conversation? Was I respectful and friendly, or a bigoted asshole?
I mean, I enjoyed our conversation, and I would say you are very respectful and friendly. Um, I feel kind of like like there's like a certain political climate right now that's like I don't know what it is. I think a lot of trans people feel really defensive, and you know, um, there's a lot of like these political issues um, going around. I mean, I don't really. I'm not. I have a really thick skin, so I don't. I don't usually like detect. I mean, I don't really detect transphobia very well. So I just focus on the ideas. I feel it seems like you're very open-minded and like totally really willing to intelligently consider every single item and like you're not like dogmatically clinging to anything. And maybe I could learn from you a little bit because I tend to like lecture people, and put more stock in like ideas. And I think like, you don't want to have like blinders on.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I guess because the way I deal with people, that I always put respect first. I always like for me it's I I just feel like oftentimes, regardless of what our disagreements may be or our differences may be, if we can find if there can be mutual respect, I think that people can get along a lot better. I remember I was talking to someone else that once wanted me to interview them, and their concern was that all I wanted to do was to bring them on and basically just bring them on to humiliate them, basically. Like let me just go in on let me just set them up to knock them down. And I had to let them know, like, that's not my MO. Like,
I
my
just,
whole
I mean, I just don't think I could like, I don't know, maybe I'm arrogant. I just don't really know what someone would say to me that would like destroy me. I mean, I don't know what is, I guess like some trans people are really fragile though.
yeah, yeah. And
And maybe
it,
that,
so,
keep going.
yes, but because I think there has been times where I've been talking to certain people, and I didn't feel like I was saying anything disrespectful or mean, but it just seemed like they took what I was saying in a more negative way than what I felt like I was actually expressing, and
Yeah.
it's hard for me to know, like, am I just too like loose with how I talk, or are they just too
I think
sensitive?
there, I think there are certain, like, when you tell someone like you don't think that, I mean, I guess there's different ways to put things. Like most trans people really, it's really important for trans people to understand that they will never be cis people, right? So most trans people definitely understand that they have a difference with cis people. But like on the other hand, like if you phrase it in a way and you say like, it is impossible to change your sex or to transition from male to female, it feels like you're sort of denying all the success, like, and all the benefits that people, the reality of like trans people
And
who,
but I think, like, as far as my conversation with you, what the thing that stands out is, when you started talking about uh dysphoria. I think the way you expressed it, gave me a like a bit of deeper insight into how that might feel, and
yeah,
how, even if you don't believe that someone can literally transition from one sex to the other, you can at least understand why they go through the process that they go through, in terms of like how they alter their body and the way that they live their lives and carry themselves and whatnot.
yeah,
And that's, and I think that's the value of having these types of conversations. Maybe we'll never see eye to eye, but we can come a little bit closer to understanding each other. But I think part of the problem is people do stuff like this, and for out the gate, the intention is mean spirited. Like, I think a lot of times, people, like, there's this whole aspect of, wanting to have these debates just for the sake of winning or humiliating somebody, versus trying to actually understand them, and just
yeah,
having an open court for both parties to just express themselves in a
yeah.
respectful way.
Some people have hotter tempers and don't feel as confident in expressing themselves verbally. So, that's just the reality of it. I think it's definitely good if you're hosting an interview, you do have a certain degree of power over the person because you get to ask them questions that they didn't see in advance. Um, so it's definitely, I think, maybe one way to help just generally is just go over in advance that, I'll be asking you questions. Like I have them planned out. Like, they might be whatever, but like it's not necessarily my views or it's not to enforce my views over you. It's to explore your views, and I guess, people are worried about like bullying or like being lampooned like
Yeah,
Matt Walsh style. Like,
yeah,
and I mean, that's just like the thing is like you can't, yeah, I mean that like that's just fear. Like, you know, you have to share your opinion and let it stand on its own. I mean, if like I mean, that's really all there is to say about that. Like, people can judge for themselves. If people are ridiculing you, they're usually stupid. They usually don't understand what the ideas are and they're trying to make it like a schoolyard thing.
yeah.
Um, so
And we see a lot, man. I swear, I see so much of that with podcasts, where it's obvious that I mean, just obvious setups where it's like they brought this guy here just to dig into him, just to make him sweat. Like, there were no good intentions here, and that's the main thing that I wanted to make sure that I avoid. But that's not my general energy anyway. I love people, man. I love people to death, so I don't have a reason to do anything like that. I feel like we can express ourselves openly and honestly, and just walk that line with a certain degree of respect. And yeah, that's pretty much that's all the questions I have for you.
Okay, well, thank you for the interview. If you want to do any more projects, let me know, or
Yeah.
I will try to follow your channel a little bit. I'm kind of a ghost on the internet. I try to stay anonymous, and I
Yeah,
don't really have.
that's no, sometimes that's for the best. I completely understand.
Oh yeah. So I don't really have a. I will link my Twitter afterwards. Actually, no, I won't because yeah, I'm sketched out about people going through my stuff.
I mean,
So
you could just send it to me. I wouldn't share it to anybody. I wouldn't share it with anyone. But
okay,
then they might, because I don't have I got like 200 followers or something. So
trust you. I'll do it.
okay, I'm not I'm not gonna put it out or anything.
Post it on Libs of TikTok.
Yeah, yeah, no.
Are you
You're
thinking the
good.
next libs of TikTok? Am I a lib of TikTok? Did I say? I'm trying to. I guess like what I said about some things would be perceived, or you could like edit it to make it like really outrageous and weird or something. I don't know.
No, I mean, it's like there was nothing that was like, at least in my view, like I could tell like where in certain parts of the conversations, like where our ideologies were kind of more distant, but it wasn't any. Again, it's like I don't see how people just get to the point of where it's just like, okay, well, fuck this person, or did like that's what I don't understand. It's like, okay, well, I just look at it like we think differently, but if there's no harm, then is it worth getting all uppity
Well,
and upset?
it's a cultural thing. I mean, like, so in order to sort of get to the point where you want to like exterminate someone from
Yeah.
existence, it's to have a lot of privilege and power like built in. So, that's probably why Europe is like the pioneer of like genocide. I would say. Like, I think that like, you know, when people express a really like domineering view over other people or like being provocative um about something towards like a minority or like it's mainly like that it's like some sort it's a cultural thing. It's like I mean in America we tend to have a more progressive society for trans people because there's more of like a patchwork like live and let live attitude. There's lots of different groups living together. Whereas in countries like, like,
Saudi Arabia,
yeah, I mean, in countries
Middle
that are more
East.
homogenous and more centralized, like, and like a single religion controls everything. It's just like it's just like a little bit different. So, I know that right now in transphobia is a lot more severe in like England than it is in the United States. It's just because there's just like more elitist sentiment there. One thing I was like reading recently. I don't know if it's true.
Yeah, honestly, I would have thought England would be more progressive, if anything.
No, England's really transphobic. It's like one of the most transphobic countries in Europe.
Wow.
England is one of the only developed countries that right now doesn't provide any. They've like they've frozen their entire healthcare program for trans youth. So they've effectively like gone all the way back to like you know they've like completely. I mean, it's not. But the thing is, it's not like an official policy. It's just sort of issues with like bureaucratic issues and political like stagnation causing it. But yeah, England's very transphobic. J.K. Rowling is from England, and it's like it's called. There's just a lot less. You can't just it's less it's harder to get medical treatment as a trans person.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that. I had no clue. I always thought of England and really Europe in general as just being like honestly, I didn't expect that to be. I gotta look into that. It's interesting.
It was. Europe definitely had trans, you know, at what like Europe had I mean it's complicated. There's I mean Europe has never done what American conservatives have started doing, which is criminalizing trans healthcare. Like no European country has ever proposed putting someone in jail for providing transgender health, medical treatments to minors, right? Like in Europe, that wouldn't even, I mean, like, so it's a little bit complicated, but they do have more like medical gatekeeping, supposedly.
So is you're saying like it's not so much like they're doing something against the community, but they don't do anything for the trans community either.
Yeah, well, yeah. I would just say like in the United States right now, and the Western Hemisphere in general, but like the United States and Canada are, you know, extremely friendly places to live for trans people worldwide because in the United States we have many states that legally and socially protect trans people, which allows trans people to have a lot of freedom, particularly like employment and freedom of where they can live. And that's not as true in European countries, especially not the United Kingdom.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
I got you. Okay, Erin.
Yeah. It
It
was
was
nice talking.
it was wonderful talking to you.
Yeah. You have a good time or you have a good day. Stay in touch.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. So thank you so much. I appreciate you giving me a portion of your time. I appreciate it so much. I appreciate it so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I will follow you up. Did you link me your YouTube already?
I'll send you a link in a bit. But
Thank you.
yeah. Okay. So thank you. Thank you.
Bye.